The night went wrong fast, so fast that even Vivian Hale, a woman who controlled entire boardrooms with a single raised brow, had no idea how she ended up hiding behind a marble pillar with her assistant clutching her arm like they were in a bad action movie. It would have been hilarious if it weren't terrifying. But that was the thing about America, or at least New York City. One second you were sipping overpriced champagne at a charity gala, and the next you were caught in the middle of a security breach so chaotic it felt scripted. Vivian inhaled slowly, steadying her breath the same way she did before signing multimillion-dollar deals. Her assistant, Emma Carter, not yet 26 and far too earnest for the cutthroat corporate world, stared at her with wide hazel eyes that shimmered with worry. Vivian had always thought Emma's eyes were her most distracting feature. Tonight they were dangerously so. "Vivian," Emma whispered, voice trembling but somehow still soft, "they said to stay where we are. Should we move just in case? We are not running into a crowd of panicked executives," Vivian whispered back, lowering her voice but not her authority. "We wait. We evaluate. We stay smart." Emma swallowed, nodding, but her fingers still curled around Vivian's sleeve, gentle yet desperate. Vivian should have told her to let go. She didn't. Vivian Hale, cold-hearted CEO, future Forbes cover star, did not freeze in moments of danger. She did not get distracted. And she definitely did not feel the rapid heartbeat of her assistant through the thin fabric between them. Yet here she was, feeling everything. Outside the ballroom, alarms blared in sharp bursts, echoing through the towering building. Security personnel were shouting instructions. No one knew what happened yet, only that the lockdown protocol had been triggered. Could be a false alarm. Could be. But the tension in the air said otherwise. Vivian exhaled and finally turned to face Emma fully. "You're safe," she said quietly, her voice gentler than she intended. "I won't let anything happen to you." Emma blinked at her, startled. You don't have to promise that." "I know," Vivian replied. "But I am." Emma's lips parted, not in fear this time, but in something softer, something that pulled dangerously at Vivian's composure. It wasn't the time. It definitely wasn't the place. But moments like this rarely ask for permission. Emma, still holding on to her, whispered, "You always seem so unshakable." Vivian raised a brow. "Not always. Really, because you look like someone who never panics. Panic is inefficient." Emma let out the tiniest laugh, nervous but real. Vivian felt it in her chest. Then the lights flickered. The entire ballroom darkened momentarily, plunging them into a thick, tense shadow. Emma stiffened, gripping her arm with both hands. When the lights returned, dimmer this time, Vivian knew one thing for certain. This wasn't a drill. "Come on," Vivian murmured, tugging Emma gently. "We're moving to the service corridor. Fewer people. Safer paths." "But security said." "I am your boss," Vivian interrupted. "And trust me, Emma. I know this building better than they do." Emma hesitated only a second before nodding. Trust, fragile and real, passed between them in a thin invisible thread. They slipped through the edge of the ballroom, weaving past overturned chairs and abandoned champagne glasses. Vivian placed one hand at the small of Emma's back, guiding her swiftly but carefully. Her touch was firm, protective, impossibly intimate in a moment like this. Emma felt it. Vivian knew she felt it, because Emma leaned back ever so slightly, as though the contact steadied her more than the floor beneath her feet. When they reached the service hallway, it was almost silent. Too silent. Vivian scanned the space-narrow corridor, metal doors, emergency lights casting red hues across Emma's skin. The girl looked ethereal, like tragedy and hope wrapped together. "Vivian," Emma murmured. "Why are you being so calm about this?" "Because one of us has to be," Vivian replied. "And it can't be me, I guess." "No," Vivian said in a softer tone. "Not when you're shaking." Emma flushed, embarrassed. Vivian noticed. She noticed everything about Emma, far more than she ever admitted to herself. "Sorry," Emma mumbled. This isn't exactly in my job description." Vivian almost smiled. Assistants handle many unexpected tasks. Getting trapped in a high-rise event lockdown wasn't in the handbook. "Perhaps I should update it," Vivian said dryly. Emma let out a nervous snort. "Yeah, maybe add a chapter titled How to Survive Terror in High Heels." Vivian actually smiled this time, brief but undeniably real. Emma stared at the smile like she'd been handed a winning lottery ticket. But before she could get lost in it, a loud metallic thud echoed from farther down the corridor. Emma stiffened instantly. "What was that?" "Stay behind me," Vivian ordered, stepping forward. "No way," Emma shot back, surprising Vivian with the sudden steel in her voice. "I'm not letting you go first. You're too important." Vivian turned sharply. "And you're not," Emma froze, breath catching in her throat. It was the first time Vivian realized she said it like she meant it. "Emma," she added, quieter now. "Don't think for a second that your life is worth less than mine." Emma's eyes shimmered again, but not with fear this time. Something warmer. Something dangerously close to affection. Vivian didn't dare look too long. She couldn't. Not with the building in chaos. Not with Emma's heart practically written on her face. They moved together step by slow step. Vivian in front, Emma shadowing her closely. Their breaths synced, their steps matched, like partners in a dance they didn't know they were learning. At the next corner, Vivian paused. "Emma, if something happens, you run. You don't look back." Emma shook her head stubbornly. "Not happening. I'm staying with you. That's not up for debate." "Well," Emma whispered, "neither is my decision." Vivian didn't curse often, but she almost did. Before she could respond, another sound echoed, a clatter of something metallic hitting the floor. Vivian grabbed Emma's wrist, pulling her closer, pressing her gently against the wall to shield her. Emma sucked in a breath, shocked by the sudden closeness, their faces inches apart. Vivian felt Emma tremble. She shouldn't have noticed that, shouldn't have breathed her in, but Emma's presence was too near, too warm. Emma whispered, "Vivian, are you scared?" Vivian opened her mouth to deny it, then closed it. For once in her life, honesty felt easier. "A little," she admitted. Emma's fingers, almost without thought, brushed Vivian's hand. "Then we'll be scared together." Vivian's heart thudded, an unfamiliar, unwelcome, irresistible sound. Before she could pull away or lean in, the emergency lights flickered again. Vivian forced herself to step back. Focus, she reminded herself. Crisis first. Confessions later. Fever. She guided Emma toward the stairwell door. But the handle was locked. Emma frowned. "Is that normal?" "No," Vivian said, tension rising. "Not during a lockdown. Something is wrong." Emma inhaled shakily. "So what do we do?" Vivian turned slowly, meeting her gaze. "We trust each other," she said. "Completely." Emma nodded, almost instantly, like she'd been waiting to hear those words for far too long. Vivian hadn't realized how much she needed to say them. Together they moved deeper into the unknown corridor, danger lurking ahead, emotion burning between them, the city outside glittering through narrow windows like a witness to the night that was about to change everything. Their fates intertwined, their fears shared. And somewhere in that fragile, breathless space between survival and surrender, something tender began to bloom. Something neither of them were ready for. Something neither of them could stop. The stairwell was darker than they expected. A narrow shaft of concrete and metal spirals that echoed every small sound. Emma's heels clicked nervously on the steps, and Vivian had to bite back a small smile. Not exactly the elegant escape she envisioned, but it would have to do. "Are you holding up?" Vivian asked without looking back, her voice calm, professional, though Emma could hear the edge of worry. I think so," Emma replied, though her voice quivered. She forced herself to match Vivian's pace. Every step was a test, every creak of the metal underfoot a reminder that danger was close. Vivian paused at a landing, pressing her back against the wall and gesturing for Emma to do the same. "We can't rush. We don't know what's waiting for us." Emma leaned against the wall, heart still racing. She stole a glance at Vivian. The CEO's sharp features softened in the dim red emergency lights, and for the first time, Emma saw the cracks beneath the perfectly controlled facade. Vivian was human, and more importantly, she was vulnerable, and Emma felt a rush of protectiveness she hadn't expected. "I didn't realize," Emma whispered almost to herself. You could be scared." Vivian's lips twitched in something like amusement. "Scared is human. Unprepared is fatal. That's the difference." Emma's hand brushed against Vivian's arm, unconsciously seeking reassurance. Vivian's pulse quickened, though she forced herself to stay composed. Every inch of proximity was electric, a tension neither could ignore. They moved again, careful and quiet. Vivian led the way, instincts razor-sharp. She knew every corner, every fire door, every maintenance shaft. Emma followed, silently trusting her, leaning on Vivian's judgment as much as her strength. At one landing, a metallic screech echoed from below, like something large being dragged across concrete. Emma froze. "Vivian," she whispered. "Stay close," Vivian commanded, pressing her hand lightly but firmly against Emma's lower back. Her touch sent a thrill up Emma's spine, grounding her fear but igniting something else entirely. The stairwell twisted and turned. Every so often, they caught glimpses of the city lights through narrow windows. Emma tried to distract herself by counting floors, thinking of how far they had come. But she kept getting lost in the way Vivian moved ahead, graceful, controlled, almost like she was in a world separate from this chaos. Suddenly, a loud crash came from above. The stairwell trembled slightly. Emma gasped, gripping Vivian's sleeve. Vivian's hand found Emma's, holding it firmly. "You're okay," she said. The words were soft, almost tender, carrying a warmth that made Emma's stomach flutter. Emma looked up at her, searching for reassurance. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, the world outside, the alarms, the chaos faded away. All that remained was the electricity between them, the unspoken connection that had been growing since the first moment of danger. You're incredible," Emma murmured, voice barely audible. "I don't know how you do this." Vivian's eyes softened just slightly. "Experience. And necessity." She gave Emma's hand a brief squeeze, grounding them both in the moment. They continued, the stairwell eventually opening into a dimly lit service corridor. Vivian paused, scanning the area. "We need to move quickly." That noise wasn't random. Emma's heart raced. Do you think it's someone targeting the event?" Vivian's jaw tightened. "Could be. Could also be a malfunction. Either way, we can't wait to find out." They moved through the corridor, the red emergency lights casting a warm glow on Emma's face. Vivian noticed every detail, the way Emma's hair fell slightly out of place, the way her hands trembled, the faint blush on her cheeks. Each observation deepened something unspoken between them. Emma, trying to distract herself from the fear and the growing tension, attempted a light-hearted remark. "So, this isn't exactly what I imagined when I said I wanted a more adventurous career." Vivian let out a small, rare laugh. "Adventure comes in many forms. Some are more terrifying than others." Emma chuckled softly, grateful for the momentary respite. But then the sound of approaching footsteps snapped their attention back to reality. Vivian pulled Emma close against the wall, pressing her back gently but firmly. Their faces were inches apart. Emma's breath hitched, and Vivian could feel it. She could also feel the unspoken pull between them, a magnetic tension that made the danger outside both sharper and more intimate. The footsteps passed, distant but still threatening. Vivian exhaled, guiding Emma gently forward. "Let's keep moving." "Almost there." Emma's hand brushed Vivian's again, this time intentionally. "Almost." "To what?" she whispered, half teasing, half serious. Vivian didn't answer immediately. Instead, she kept moving, leading them to a heavy service door at the end of the corridor. She swiped a keycard, the door clicking open, revealing a narrow rooftop access stairwell. Fresh air hit them as they ascended. The city sprawled below, glittering and alive, a stark contrast to the claustrophobic chaos inside. Emma paused, taking in the view, then looked at Vivian. "You make it look so easy," Emma said softly. Vivian didn't look at her, but her hand tightened slightly on Emma's. "It's not easy. Not tonight. Not ever. But we adapt. We survive. Together." Emma's pulse quickened, not just from adrenaline. There was something in the words, in the way Vivian said them, that made her heart feel dangerously exposed. She wanted to say something, anything that would acknowledge the connection growing between them. But the words caught in her throat. Vivian sensed it. Without turning, she said quietly, "Emma, thank you for trusting me." Emma's eyes met hers finally. I trust you," she admitted, voice trembling slightly. The words hung between them, fragile and delicate, yet powerful. Vivian finally allowed herself to glance at Emma, really look at her, And in that moment all the professionalism, all the control, all the barriers she had built melted just a little. Their proximity was electric. The city lights reflected in Emma's eyes, making her look ethereal, almost unreal. Vivian's chest tightened in a way that had nothing to do with the physical exertion of the escape. They reached the rooftop. The wind was cold, whipping through their hair, carrying the sounds of the city. Below, emergency crews swarmed the building. Vivian pulled Emma behind a low wall for cover. "We need to wait until it's clear," she said, though her voice carried a softness, a vulnerability she rarely allowed herself. Emma shivered, and Vivian instinctively draped her coat over her. Their hands brushed again, lingering longer than necessary. Emma looked up at Vivian, her gaze full of unspoken questions. Vivian's voice was low. "Emma, when this is over." Emma's heartbeat skipped. "Yes." Vivian exhaled, trying to steady herself. "We'll talk. We'll figure it out. But for now, stay close. That's all that matters." Emma nodded, leaning slightly into her. The contact was brief, yet it carried a warmth that neither wanted to break. The minutes felt like hours as they waited, tense and silent, every shadow potentially hiding a threat. But amidst the fear, there was a growing closeness, an intimacy born from shared danger and trust. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the rooftop cleared. The coast was momentarily safe. Vivian extended her hand to Emma. "Come on. Let's get you somewhere secure." Emma took it without hesitation, her fingers intertwining with Vivian's. The simple act carried weight, a promise of reliance and a connection that had been forming since the first alarm. They descended carefully to the next floor, finding a small maintenance room where they could catch their breath. Emma sank onto a chair, still trembling from adrenaline. Vivian leaned against the wall, observing her. "You okay?" Vivian asked softly. Emma looked up, a small, tired smile on her lips. "I am now. Because you're here." Vivian felt her chest tighten. "You've been incredible tonight," she admitted. "Brave. Smart. I wouldn't have made it without you." Emma's cheeks flushed. "You make it sound like I had a choice." Vivian smirked faintly, though her eyes softened. "You did. You could have run, panicked, done nothing. But you stayed. And I'm grateful. More than I can say." The room was quiet, filled only with their breathing and the distant hum of city life. For the first time, the weight of the night and the rush of survival allowed something unspoken to surface. Something tender, something dangerous, something that hinted at more than just trust and relief. Emma shifted closer, emboldened by the shared solitude. "Vivian, can I ask you something?" Vivian tilted her head, curious. "Anything." Emma hesitated, then whispered, "Do you feel it too?" Vivian froze. The question hung in the air like a fragile crystal. She could feel the truth in Emma's gaze, in the proximity of her hand still barely brushing hers. "Yes," Vivian said finally, quietly but firmly. "I do." Emma's eyes widened slightly, disbelief and hope mingling. Then she smiled, shy but radiant. I feel it too." The admission settled between them, heavier than any danger outside. In the midst of chaos, they had found each other. Vivian stepped closer, just enough that Emma could feel her warmth. "Then we'll navigate this," she murmured. "Together. No matter what comes next." Emma nodded, resting her head briefly against Vivian's shoulder. "Together," she echoed. Outside, sirens wailed and chaos continued. Inside, two hearts had found a fragile, enduring peace amidst the storm. They stayed in the maintenance room for several tense minutes, hearts gradually slowing, ears straining for any sound of danger. Outside, the city continued its chaotic symphony, sirens, shouting, the occasional metallic clang from the upper floors, but inside, there was an island of calm. Emma finally lifted her head from Vivian's shoulder, her hair slightly mussed, cheeks flushed with adrenaline and something warmer, something intimate. "I can't believe we actually made it this far," she whispered. Vivian's eyes softened, her usually sharp, calculated expression replaced by something vulnerable, almost tender. "Neither can I," she admitted. "But we have. And we're still standing. Together." Emma's lips quivered in a smile. "You know, I never thought being trapped in a high-rise crisis would, I don't know, feel like this." Her hand found Vivian's again, intertwining fingers without hesitation. Like we're connected. Vivian inhaled sharply, a rare moment of honesty escaping her. We are connected, Emma. More than just surviving. I've felt it since the first alarm. Emma's heart skipped a beat, and she looked up at her boss with wide eyes. You mean it? Vivian nodded, a faint, uncharacteristic blush rising to her cheeks. Every word. You're remarkable. Braver than anyone I've ever known. Emma's lips curved into a shy, almost disbelieving smile. And you're incredible too. Even when you try not to be. A quiet laugh escaped Vivian, soft and genuine. It was rare for anyone to hear her laugh like this, unguarded, warm, unpretentious. Emma felt a flutter in her chest, a sense of intimacy that had been growing, nurtured by fear, trust, and the shared vulnerability of the night. Suddenly, a loud voice echoed from outside the door. Is anyone in there? Security teams are clearing the building. Vivian's eyes met Emma's. That's our cue. She gave Emma's hand a reassuring squeeze. Come on. We're getting out of here. They stepped cautiously into the hallway. Emergency lights guided their path, casting long shadows across walls and floors littered with debris from the earlier chaos. Each step brought them closer to the rooftop exit, the open city night calling them forward. As they emerged onto the rooftop, the cool night air hit them, carrying the faint hum of traffic below. The city sprawled endlessly, lights glittering like distant stars. Emma breathed deeply, relief flooding her senses. She turned to Vivian, smiling despite the exhaustion. We made it, she said softly. Vivian allowed herself a small smile, one of her rare genuine ones. Yes, we did. And you were remarkable. Braver than anyone I've ever seen. Emma's cheeks warmed. You made me brave. Vivian stepped closer, the tension between them shifting from fear to something tender, something intimate. Emma, there's something I need to tell you. Something I've been holding back. Emma tilted her head, curiosity mingling with anticipation. What is it? Vivian's eyes softened, the steel of her CO persona melting under the weight of honesty. I've felt this connection since the beginning of tonight. I didn't know how to name it, or if it was appropriate. But I can't ignore it anymore. Emma's heart raced. She took a step closer, closing the distance. Vivian, I felt it too. I was just scared to say it. Vivian's hand reached up, brushing a strand of hair from Emma's face. The contact was gentle, deliberate, full of intention. Then we don't have to be scared anymore, she murmured. Emma smiled, leaning into the touch. No, not anymore. The city stretched out below them, vast and indifferent, but up here on the rooftop, there was a world that belonged only to them. The danger that had brought them together now faded, replaced by a fragile, exhilarating intimacy. Vivian finally allowed herself to take Emma's face in her hands, their eyes locking. Emma, may I? She whispered. Emma's response was a barely audible nod, her lips parting slightly, and then Vivian closed the distance, pressing her lips gently to Emma's in a kiss that was soft, exploratory, full of the promise of everything they had yet to discover. The kiss lingered, an acknowledgement of trust, fear, relief, and the undeniable pull that had been building between them. When they finally pulled back, their foreheads rested against each other, breaths mingling. I think this is the start of something, Emma said, voice husky with emotion. Vivian nodded, her eyes shining. Something worth protecting. Something worth taking a risk for. They stayed like that for a few moments, savoring the quiet intimacy, the rare chance to be close without fear or pretense. The city lights reflected in Emma's eyes, and Vivian felt a sense of warmth, of grounding, that she had never experienced before. Finally, they pulled back slightly, hands still entwined. We should go down, Vivian said, though the reluctance in her voice was clear. Safe areas, authorities, all that practical nonsense. Emma chuckled softly, leaning against Vivian. I can handle practical nonsense as long as you're with me. Vivian smirked, a hint of her usual confidence returning. Don't get used to being so clingy, she teased lightly, though the way her hand tightened around Emma's betrayed her true feelings. They descended carefully from the rooftop, following emergency crews to a secure exit. Outside, the night air was crisp, filled with the sounds of sirens, chatter, and the distant hum of the city. The danger was over, the crisis resolved, but the bond they had formed remained, unbroken, undeniable. A few blocks away, in a small quiet park they passed on the way to a safe house arranged by the company, Emma glanced up at Vivian. "You know, tonight was terrifying, but I wouldn't trade it for anything." Vivian raised an eyebrow, smiling faintly. "Even with all the chaos, alarms, and near-death experiences?" Emma laughed softly, leaning her head on Vivian's shoulder. "Especially that. Because it brought us here." Vivian felt a warmth in her chest she hadn't expected. She brushed her fingers gently against Emma's, the intimacy natural now, effortless. "Then I guess I'd have to agree. Sometimes chaos has its benefits." They walked in silence for a while, letting the city's lights wash over them, each step a quiet affirmation of the connection that had blossomed between them amidst fear and uncertainty. When they finally reached the safe house, they paused at the door, looking at each other. Vivian's hand brushed Emma's cheek gently, tracing the curve of her jaw. "Emma, whatever happens next, we face it together." Emma smiled, eyes shimmering with emotion. "Together," she echoed. Inside, the safe house was warm, a stark contrast to the tension-filled night outside. They settled on a sofa, still close, still connected. The adrenaline had faded, replaced by comfort, trust, and the quiet, thrilling intimacy of newfound love. Vivian glanced at Emma, a rare softness in her gaze. "You know, I think I could get used to this. Not the crisis part, obviously, but us." Emma's hand found Vivian's, squeezing it gently. "Neither could I." They sat like that for a while, letting the silence speak for them, letting the weight of the night settle into something enduring. No alarms, no chaos, just the two of them and the gentle, exhilarating reality of having found something rare, something beautiful in each other. Finally, Emma leaned against Vivian, resting her head on her shoulder. "I think we make a pretty good team," she whispered. Vivian's lips curved into a genuine smile, rare and full of warmth. "The best team," she agreed, pressing a gentle kiss to the top of Emma's head. Outside, the city moved on, indifferent, oblivious. But inside that small safe house, in the quiet aftermath of chaos, two hearts had found their rhythm, two souls had found trust, and two women had discovered love in the most unexpected of circumstances. And for the first time in a long time, both of them allowed themselves to believe that love, fragile, fierce, and undeniably real, could survive anything, even the most terrifying night. They stayed like that until the first light of dawn crept through the curtains, painting the room in soft gold. Outside, the city began to wake, oblivious to the night's drama. Inside, Vivian and Emma shared quiet laughter, gentle touches, and whispered promises. The world would continue to demand strength, cunning, and control. But here, in each other's presence, they had something far rarer: trust, intimacy, and the beginnings of a love that neither chaos nor fear could ever break. And so, hand in hand, heart in heart, they faced the new day together, stronger for what they had endured, and infinitely more certain of the bond that had blossomed between them. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to get notifications about next videos.